YouTube's time. Sometimes YouTube is very friendly and is like, you know what? We can go and immediately start. But sometimes it takes like 30 seconds and we just sit here awkwardly and stare at each other and wonder when it's going to start. And guess what? Today's a good day. Let's do some chaotic good. Music intro. Oh, baby, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Chaotic Good Sports. Appreciate you joining. We have raised over $350 already. And just before we get started, just like every single episode, 100% of the proceeds of all the super chats are going directly to charity. This one is going to be All Hands and Hearts, which is a phenomenal organization recommended by Steph. They provide disaster relief not only for the country, but around the world, whether it's rebuilding schools, homes, sending out first responders. And so they are a great organization. So this fundraiser will be open until next Tuesday. But let's get on with it because we have a very, very special guest today. She is the host of the 49 Carats podcast, the co-host of the Bully Ball podcast, and also, you may have seen her in the San Francisco 49ers schedule release. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Sanchez.
Yeah, Tom. It's good to be back, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Listen, back, yes, because if some of you are unaware, so the last time I spoke to Steph, this was about 2.5 years ago. It was in January of 2022, and it was right before the 49ers-Packers divisional game, which, let's
remember that one.
I forget who won. Yeah, it's a crazy game that happened. Nick Bosa came and peed on a high school somewhere. It was fine. I think it might have ended a tie. Everyone went to the Super Bowl and got their hopes and dreams. It was fine. Everything was fine that year. Yeah, well, don't worry. We'll talk about that. But thank you so much for coming on once again. It is great to catch up with you. It's great to see you. Inject just donated $500 fracking dollars. And guess what?
Let's go.
Oh, man, we're rocking. We are already at $875, and we haven't even been a minute going. But, Steph, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. How have you been, first of all? Because it's been a while. We got a lot to catch up on these past 2 years.
Yeah, I've been great. No, first of all, I just got to say again, thank you for having me on because I've seen who you've had on Chaotic Good, Packers Legends. I'm like, I guess I'm a Niners legend. I don't know. We'll roll with it, right? But again, thanks for having me on. I've been good, man. Like, just like I said, living the dream, and things could be better at 49ers land, as you might know.
Yep.
But we can't complain too much, right?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, right, you are to us what the Chiefs are to you, right? In sense of once the playoffs roll around, we just can't beat the fracking 49ers. But once the Super Bowl comes around, it turns out you can't beat the fracking Chiefs. But I will say, even though it's a little doom and gloom right this second, and even though, he didn't win the Super Bowl, some things have happened between the Super Bowl and now to you, Steph, that's been pretty monumental that I definitely want to get into and talk about. But before we get to that, I kind of want to just introduce you to the audience and things like that. We talk about you're the host of the 49 Carats podcast, co-host of the Bully Ball. How did you even get to this point? I know you've been surrounded by 49ers fans your entire life. How did you get to the point to become a 49ers fan, and what kind of even led you in the football direction?
Well, it all started with my brother being a huge just Bay Area sports fan. By the way, F the Dodgers. We're not fans of them. I understand what's probably happening tonight, but we're not messing with that.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, so, I mean, my brother's favorite sports team was the Niners. And so by osmosis, I kind of was just always around that and just starting to watch football games. It's like, when you don't play football and you're watching it for the first time, it's always like, this is confusing. What is going on? But I kind of loved that about football and just having to learn it as you watch. And I'm still learning things today. It's a crazy sport. It's very humbling to learn, I think. And anyway, like that just kind of grew my love for football, for the Niners.
Yeah.
And joining Twitter over 10 years ago, a long time ago, is kind of where I found the community fandom, right?
Yeah.
Because before I just share that kind of with like my family, and yeah, I'd go to games here and there, but like finding that community on social media, I think, is kind of what took it to another level. And, it's kind of gotten me to the point where I am today. I started like a fan Twitter account. It was called 49ers Hub. Through the years, it's now someone else is handling it, but that kind of started the love of, I guess, being a face of like a content creator, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
that word didn't really exist back then, but
No,
like,
it did not.
That's the start of it. And I was always behind the scenes. I was never really like a podcasting person, because quite honestly, like, recovering introvert over here, I never thought I was really I was really good at, speaking and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I started a podcast a few years ago with my then co-host Angie. That's when you had us on, and we're really grateful for that. And yeah, it's just grown since then. And yeah,
Amazing.
49 Carats is my podcast, my baby. And along the way, I've gotten to do some cool things as well. The Nick Bosa impersonation, that kind of what landed me the schedule release opportunity with the 49ers. So yeah, it's been really cool. It's been awesome, like, these last couple years, and I'm trying to be like you, man.
Just work all the time. Well, Steph, you've done a phenomenal job, and like, I'm so happy just to like see your journey and see you continue to have success. And I actually want to talk to you about that, because when I met you, we had you on 2.5 years ago. We had you and Angie on. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was mostly just the podcast, right? And like, oh, we lost her. Oh, hold on. We're getting her back. Hold on. It's all right. We're back now. We're back.
Me?
We're good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
It's all right. It's all right. It happens. Anyway, so when we had you on last time, it was just the podcast, it seemed. And then it seemed in recent years you kind of leaned into this Nick Bosa impersonation. Can I get kind of your thought process? Because that is a very different type of content creation, right? From like doing long form podcasts, talking specifically about the 49ers. And when you're imitating Nick Bosa, right? It's kind of just the low, like very soft spoken. You got to get the rhythm right, the cadence right. And it's just a different kind of content creation, which obviously has propelled you to where you are today. Kind of what started that for you, and what gave you the idea to go like, hey, this is a different type of content that I want to potentially try and pursue?
Well, a few seasons ago, Nick Bosa became a team captain for the first time. And shortly after that, we caught wind of the fact that Nick Bosa was doing Saturday speeches to the team.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like, well, that's just kind of silly. Like, have you heard this guy speak?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way he's giving like inspirational speeches to the team. So like, just as a joke, like I went on TikTok, I just did like, short video to just imagine what that would be like, what he would say, how it would sound, right? The cadence and everything of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, people loved it, like even more than I thought they would. I was like, okay, I guess this was pretty good. And what's funny is I look back at that video now and I'm like, it doesn't even sound like him. Like now I've gotten it more down, right? Like I've gotten better at it, which is pretty crazy. But no, that's kind of what started it. I didn't intend to be a Nick Bosa impersonator, like
it's on the resume, it's on LinkedIn.
No one wakes up one day and decides I'm gonna impersonate Nick Bosa, but it kind of just became that. And along the way, people have become fans of it. They asked me to do it. I haven't done one in a while, but it's just one of those things. I don't want people to get tired of it.
Sure.
But every once in a while I do got to bring it out for some key moments.
For special occasions, right? And it makes sense. I mean, so you put out that first video, right? Because I've seen that those videos have gone viral like time after time. And your kind of reaction to it is like, oh, all right, there's this imminent surprise of like, oh, damn, like I didn't know people were going to like it this much. Right. I know exactly how you feel. Like the first Packers video I ever made almost 10 years ago now, I was like, oh, back then that went quote unquote viral, like got 60,000 views. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy now. Did that kind of influence your decision about how you make content, right? Because those two things are so vastly different. Because for the podcast, right, it's long form. You're talking about like X's and O's of football, like really getting into the nitty gritty about your team and how they're performing, etc. And then the other one, right, it's just completely different with like Nick Bosa impersonations, but they're a little bit easier to make, like little short form, etc. Did that kind of sway any decision making when you were looking to make more content in the future?
Yeah, I definitely think so because it's so different from, the normal content that I would do. I only kept it to like TikTok and Twitter, right? Because that's where most of the audience was. It was
Sure.
mostly on Twitter. But like Instagram, like I would post about my podcast, but like I didn't post about those impersonations because first of all, like my Instagram at that time was mostly people I actually knew,
Yeah.
So it's like, God, they would think I'm weird for posting this. They wouldn't find the humor in it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't actually until like a couple years after that when like John Lynch mentioned it in one of his press conferences
Yep.
that I actually posted about it and became more open to like posting it. And then people liked it there too. But at first I was a little scared because like I didn't really, I kind of shielded that more personal Instagram from, my content creation, which now I guess I've opened the door to it. But yeah, it's strange to kind of now feel like you're a brand almost.
Sure.
Like I almost hate that.
Yeah,
But,
no, I completely understand. I mean, as a former teacher, right? Like my Instagram was on private for a huge chunk of while I was doing this, simply because I was like, all right, like I have to teach and like I don't need a parent like watching this video, like at least having that accessibility to it. They can still find it on YouTube and stuff. And yeah, like that's a tough decision. Like you just come down to a day of going like, okay, like, yeah, there's some momentum here. Like this is doing pretty well. All right, yeah, we're gonna have to change this from like my personal Instagram, which like I'll still post some stuff every now and then, to kind of going, all right, we're jumping into the content creation pool.
Right. I think too, like, because my podcasting is serious, the
Yeah.
Nick Bosa impersonations are funny.
Sure.
I think separating that too is important because I want people to take me seriously for, my opinions on football. And I don't want people to think that I'm just the impersonations. Like, and in some ways, that's why I kind of have scaled back on the impersonations because yes, it's been a great way for a lot of people to get to know me, but in a way, it like opens people's eyes to my actual content, which is the podcasting, right? So
Sure.
while the impersonations are maybe more popular and have gotten the more eyes on me, it's like I want you to stay because of the podcasting, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what started it for me. That's what I have the passion for. So yeah, I think that's interesting too, because like you're a comedian as well. You're hilarious, but I like how you intersect your comedy with your football takes. Like
Sure.
it all works very seamlessly. So like I admire how you do that too, because I think
I
that's
appreciate that.
it's difficult. Yeah.
That's very well. I mean, you bring up a great point too, and that's like something that I still grapple with as well, right? Because like I didn't start. This whole channel started with me doing a reaction video, right? In which like I'm sitting on my couch reacting to the Packers losing the NFC Championship game against the Seahawks. And from there, like I made a couple more videos, but I was like, all right, well, I want to do the podcast now, right? I'm going to do Packcast. And I ignored YouTube for like the majority of 2015 until I came back around in 2016 and was just doing it audio only. But it's exactly what you said. Like this started with me talking about the Packers. I was recapping the games and then I was interviewing fans from opposing teams. Like that's how I got introduced to you and that's how we met for the Packcast. And now like I still struggled that because I don't want to just be the reaction guy, right?
Yeah.
In which like you have all of this publicity, like you have people knowing you for that. And that's great and that's awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But like I also watch a ton of football and just want to talk about football, right? And sometimes it is in the form of like a 50-minute interview, or it is, power rankings that's going to come out every single week, or predictions are going to be 30-minute episodes. So for you, and as you kind of like continue your content creation career, do you find that it's like difficult to find that balance between like the short form comedic aspect and the long form, especially if one is getting more publicity over the other?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be a bit of a challenge. But I think like the good thing is I feel like content creation is kind of becoming a suite of content. Like
Yeah.
you see content creators not just offering a single thing. Like and almost that's made it more competitive, right? Like
Yep.
people put out different forms of content and all that, and that's what they offer. So I guess in a way, like I have more to offer than just the podcasting. If you're here for the Nick Bosa impersonations, I also have this. If you're here for the podcast, I also have the impersonations. And who knows, maybe there will be other forms of content, to add over the years as well.
Sure.
But yeah, so I guess it's not a bad thing. We can look at it as a cool thing because it's like we have more to offer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like you said, too, if someone is introduced to you via the impersonations and then they find your podcast and they're like, hey, like I'm down with this because you're attracting obviously 49ers fans for the most part because you're talking this 49ers podcast. And on top of that, like Nick Bosa, 49ers player, it makes sense that you could draw them in that way. So like, I don't think it's a negative thing in any way, shape or form. I think it's just like kind of that creative decision because you mentioned like you don't want to be just this person, right? And like be put in this box of like, this is the kind of content creator that I am. So yeah, I completely understand that it's just, hey, like we have a ton of different, a large diversity of content, you would say.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about like I think football content creation too, because there's just so many avenues to it as well. Like I've started doing like more 49ers draft content
There you
as
go.
well. And that's fun, but that's only like a portion of the year. You'd be surprised. I actually don't really watch college football.
Neither do I. No, that's all good. I do not watch it. I literally watch it for the draft, and that is it. I have no time.
Yeah. So for the draft, I get like really locked into prospects. I track who the 49ers are visiting with, and I do a huge spreadsheet and all that. And I really get into it. It's actually kind of fun to me, but yeah, so I guess that's another thing. So like there's so much to get into. And that's the cool thing about the sport. That's the cool thing about content creation. And I always look at it like this, like no matter what you do, like there's gonna be someone interested in it, right?
Yeah.
Like there's people, like we said, who are interested in podcasts. Sometimes some people only listen to it audio form, that's fine. Some people prefer YouTube and they're in the live chat like we got right now.
That's right.
And then some people just, mess with the TikToks, right? Like
yeah,
that's the exhausting thing. There's so many things. we got to upload everywhere, Tom.
Oh, I know, Steph. It's so funny too because, like, for example, the Hail Mary that just happened on Sunday, right? Yeah. So usually, like, if there's a huge play that happens, whether it's Packers related or if it's like something that's beyond the Packers, that's just a big time play. What will happen is like, I'll put out a little short of me reacting to the play because I'm live streaming like every single game that there is. And this week I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw this on Instagram. I never throw these on Instagram. And it blows up on Instagram. And I was like, all right, maybe I should start doing that again. And then I put some stuff on TikTok and it will bomb, right? So it's just, all right, we just got to still figure it out. But that's the learning process of like trying to get into this business, right? Of being a content creator in which like you're going to learn along the way and kind of fine tune like what you want to put your time into. Because like you said, maybe you love the draft stuff, so that's going to start taking up maybe a little bit more time than just like April. Maybe it's like, February through April, what have you. And I think kind of as things go forward, you pick and choose like, okay, this is either doing really well, this is what I'm really passionate about, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can kind of pick your lane from there.
Yeah, I still kind of feel like I have been doing it for a couple years now, but I still feel like I'm in my infancy of content creation. Like because there's so much you can do, and like every year, like there's other content creators in the 49ers space, other teams as well. Like you're a great example of someone who's doing it at a very large scale now, right? So there's many levels. And every year, like you got to level up a little bit more than the previous year, right? So I still feel like there's a ton for me to learn. There's a ton for me to do, right? And so like that's the challenge as well, because you get to a certain point where you have like I have 9 to 5, and it's like,
Yeah.
how much do how much time do I allocate to, my podcast and my content creation,
Yep.
and still keep my job,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't, I'm not trying, I'm not trying to get fired or anything,
Yeah.
but I do spend a lot of my time on podcasting and the content creation part of it. So the balance is tough.
Yeah.
um so if you've ever had to do that, which I'm sure you have, like
Yep.
that's something that's admirable too. And I'm sure, like, I don't know if you've gotten to a point where like you're all hands on deck, but like that's the dream, right? I think for a
Sure.
lot of people and everyone who gets into content creation.
Well, it's one of those things, right, that people ask that constantly of like, oh man, I want to do what you do, or I want to get into content creation, etc. What do I need, right? And they think it's equipment, or like the thumbnail has to look this way, or their marketing, whatever, whatever. And I tell them straight up, like every single time, you start as cheap as humanly possible, right? Because you always upgrade later, and you have to love it, because if you don't love it, you will not continue to do this, right? Because
Right.
if it's in the pursuit of money, my friend, you will not find any for a long, long time. Like this is my 9th year doing it, and I have been like, this has been my full-time thing for 3 years, right? So the majority of the time I was working a full-time job while doing this, and it's 100% what you said of it becomes a commitment that also kind of like leaks into the personal life too, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, hey, I got my 9 to 5 job that I'm doing here, right? And when I was teaching, I got that last year where I was doing both full time. Like I got 3 hours sleep a night for an entire school year. It was miserable, like destroyed mental health, destroyed everything. But like you got to sacrifice things of like, hey, yeah, I can't go out on Sundays anymore. Like during the football season, which again, there's not a pity party here, but it's like,
Right.
hey, like this is a 7-day-a-week job, if you want it to be, and try to get to the point where if you want to be all hands on deck, you want this to be your full-time thing. This is unfortunately for a lot of people like what it takes, and it takes a little bit of a toll, but where are you kind of in that process? Because I find that's always like an interesting balance. Like obviously you work the 9 to 5, that's paying your pay, like paying all your bills and all that
Right.
great stuff. You can't do it without it, right? I tried leaving back in 2019 and I just failed. It didn't work. I just did not make enough money doing this. And so like, where are you now in terms of where you're trying to go, with your content creation, like now during your busy season while also trying to balance a full-time job?
I think like I want to avoid getting to a point where I am kind of sacrificing the work life balance
That's good.
and work life passion balance, right? Like
Yeah,
three different things, right? Because like I don't want to see this as work, right? Like,
sure.
and like you said, if you do see it as work, like it's probably not going to go well for you. Um, so yeah, it's really tough. I think like just with all things, you gotta have boundaries and you gotta learn to set boundaries with yourself. Like I think
Sure.
that's super important. So I've learned to do that a little bit. And personally, I think I'm okay with sacrificing getting ahead a little bit more just to keep that. And I understand like it's not like
Yeah,
that for everyone. Like maybe you want to get ahead a little bit more and you're willing to make those sacrifices,
sure.
right? Like and more power to you. Like that's awesome. And I really admire that. But if you feel like you're not at that spot yet, you know, I think it's important to have those boundaries as well. So it really depends on the person, right? Like anyone who feels like they're losing a bit of themselves by,
Yeah,
trying to get ahead, I feel like, hey, that's a personal decision maybe you have to make of should you maybe dial it back a little more bit more or whatever. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. I mean, I think I'm not willing to sacrifice too much of my sanity, my personal life,
yeah,
and what I have here at home. So that's where I'm at. But I don't think that's an excuse to not grow. Like I'm
sure.
still looking at growing, and I agree with you. I think for anyone who's looking to start, just start.
Yeah,
No matter what you have, start with what you have, and then you always just kind of like upgrade things a little bit as you go. And that's kind of what I've done as well over the years. And it could be very incremental, right?
Yep.
Like you don't have to feel bad about that. And
No.
there's going to be people who are beside you, like other content creators that you see, and you're going to be like, oh God, well, they have this. They have like
Yep.
this nice camera and their lighting is awesome. I need that right now.
Yep.
And it's like,
This will get me those subscribers. This will get me more listeners. 100%.
exactly. No, you gotta grow it, and sometimes it's small growth, and I feel like for me it's been small growth, but it's just like that's not, you don't have to be discouraged by that. Like that's the process, and your journey is different than someone else's, right? So it's not fair to compare your journey with someone else's. Like so that I got to remind myself of that sometimes too. So
it's much easier said than done, right? Because it's one of those things that, I mean, I got caught doing that, especially, trying to grow. It took 5 years, to get to 100,000 subscribers, right? I tell the story. It took 3 years to make $200 on YouTube. And that's just what it is. And I saw creators start after me and they propelled way past me, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like this guy got 100,000 subscribers and he's been doing this for a year. Cool. That kind of sucks. Like this, that doesn't feel great. And you can just drop, and it doesn't help anybody, right? Because then you're just going to get discouraged. You're going to get upset.
Exactly.
Then you're going to have to worry. And you're worrying about all the stuff that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. It's the content that you want to create, right? It's the stuff that it's an extension of you, whatever it is, whether it is the comedic side, whether it's the serious side and talking about football, that's the part of you that you are exposing to the internet, for better or for worse, right? And so you should be able to have some control and some say over that. So no, I totally respect that boundary aspect of it. And just to have those boundaries doesn't mean you're limiting growth. It's more of like, hey, these are just where my priorities are, right? Like I'm going to prioritize like my mental health, my personal life, all of those things over, putting out another video, putting out another podcast, et cetera. And no, that's super admirable. And because there's no one size fits all to make this work.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, I could be doing so much more. Like I could be sacrificing, but it's like there's no shame in what I'm doing. Like I just got to remind myself of that. And like I said, everyone's journey, what everyone prioritizes is different. And so I've just kind of accepted that. That's where I'm at. It's and it doesn't mean I'm holding myself back, right?
Exactly.
At the end of the day, like we're responsible for ourselves, our mental health, and everything that happens outside of content creation too. So we got to take care of that too.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of great things, we have raised over $1,100 already while we've been talking.
Yo.
So a huge shout out to the posse joining here. We were Steph Sanchez. And I want to talk about kind of what has happened this year, because this year for you has been insane. So you mentioned John Lynch before. So in February, like right at the podium during a press conference, and he mentions you because he's talking about Nick Bosa, and he's talking about, like, he doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, it's very prophetic, and mentions you by name. Was that the first time that like the 49ers kind of acknowledged you, like, and your content creation?
It actually wasn't. So like the first time was last April. So like the April prior to that year, I went to the combine, and that was my first time going to the combine, right? Yeah. And
it's fun, right?
It is.
It was my first time this year. It was so much fun.
100% recommend. Yeah, I'm bummed I didn't get to go this past year, and I couldn't see you there. But yeah, so it was awesome. So, one of the things people do, you go out and you go for some drinks, and there's going to be people people you recognize, people that don't know you, like, but them, right? Like,
yeah, you're just like, I know you, and they're like, who are you? Yes, I got that, because that's what you find out when you go to the combine. You don't know what the combine is until you get to the combine, right? Like, you think it's just a bunch of people running around and, like, the drills and all that. That's not the combine. The combine is, it's 11:30 at night, and you're at a bar, and Ian Rappaport's there, Sean Payton's there, and like everybody from the NFL that you could think of, coaches, beat reporters, etc. They're all there, and that is the NFL combine.
It's like the star-studded like football world. Like it's crazy, right? So that's part of the fun of it. And so one night, me and my friend Jason Ponte, shout out to him as well, another Niners content creator who I do bully ball with. So we went out one night and we see John Lynch and Adam Peters there, right? And so Jay is way more outgoing than I am. So he's like, Steph, like, come on, let's just shake their hands, say hi. What can go wrong?
Sure.
And so, he introduces himself. And I go up. I'm kind of like on the side because I'm shy, right? So I'm like, what am I doing?
Introvert. I got it.
Introvert.
You're putting him in front of you and going,
what am I doing here? I'm just going to let him do the talking, right?
Yep.
And then John Lynch, actually looks over to me and he does kind of like a double take. And he looks at me like he knows me. He immediately turns over to Adam Peters and says something to him. And he's like, this is Steph, the one who does the Nick Bosa impersonation. And I'm like, what? Like, what is happening right now? And for me to find out that way that the 49ers knew about it, again, I had no idea that anyone knew about it. I kind of thought maybe someone had seen it at some point, but not that it had spread to the front office. That's crazy. So next thing I know, I'm literally doing a Nick Bosa impersonation, John Lynch holding the phone up to send to Nick Bosa, filming a video to send to him. It was, freaking insane, dude.
What's going through, because I know that feeling and it's still crazy. And you and I were talking just a brief moment before we went live. And at the end of the day, and I think this is really important to understand too, just because you're in content creation, doesn't mean, and I'm just speaking for us right this second, still massive fans, right? Of our, massive fans of oh my God, they noticed me. And now you have Lynch literally going, hold on, I'm going to send this to Nick Bosa. And you're like, Nick Bosa's going to know who I am right now. What's going through your head? Because you got to be cool and professional, right? And you're just oh yeah, hold on. Let me stick the landing here with the greatest impersonation you've ever done. Do it on command. Well, what are you thinking about while you're going through this and having this insane experience?
I'm pretty sure at that point, I was maybe I'd have a couple of drinks by that point, right?
Liquid courage.
So that's not helping. No, that's not helping. I'm probably more nervous and more I don't know, in my head. But yes, I'm absolutely just trying to nail this Bosa impersonation. It does have to be the best impersonation. I think my voice was shaking a little bit. And doing it on the spot, I don't normally do it on the spot. I usually think of what I'm going to say beforehand when I film my own videos, right?
Yeah.
And so then I kind of just had to do something and make it up. I think I just said, hey, Nick Bosa is the Nick Bosa impersonator or something like that, right? I don't even remember what I said. But yeah, that's the tough part too. When you are a content creator, you do have to keep your cool because when you do have that chance to be around players, you almost have to act like a journalist in a way because journalists have to they can't be fangirling either.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of their job. And so in a way, you kind of have to emulate that a little bit because you don't want people looking at you crazy. Who is this person?
And then they never talk to you again.
Yeah. Yeah. They're okay, just another fan. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the weird balance you have to have too, of just meeting people that you're a huge fan of. There are some instances though, not to sidetrack us too much, but there are some instances where it's fine. I met Joe Staley and I was like, oh my God, I love you, dude. And I took a picture with him and everything and made a fool of myself. But I mean, yeah, that one, I was like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. But
sorry, good.
No.
Yeah, you're just it's fine. We're totally not panicking on the inside. It's so funny you mentioned that though, because legitimately, yeah. And if you're a content creator and you get to the point where you meet someone who is a representative of your team, whether it's a player, a coach, a GM, etc., there is a level of inside, oh, I am dying because the kid in me is, since 6 years old, I've loved this team. And now I'm talking to this person who represents my team, and now they're also taking a picture, they're taking a video of me to send to another player who I also impersonate. And it's this weird, line between being a fan, being a content creator, right? Like the first time I ever interviewed Mark Murphy, I'm sitting in the lobby and Mike McCarthy walks past me and I'm sitting there and I didn't even think they'd say yes. And Mike McCarthy is like, good morning. I'm like, good morning, coach. Like the most, I got to put a little bravado in my voice there because that's the level. And I remember I turned to Murphy's assistant at the time, Pat, and I was like, I just want to let you know, like, I'm dying inside. Like, that's the head coach. And she's like, please be professional. And I was like, I got you. I was like, you won't have to worry about it.
Right.
And it's funny because after that moment, one, that has to be totally surreal for you as a fan. But as a content creator, like, that has to just provide so much, like, validation of, oh, man, like, Lynch knows who I am. Nick Bosa, if he didn't, is about to know who I am. What did that do for you after that experience is done? Because do you have like more confidence going forward now? Because you're like, damn, there's people within the 49ers, like this team that I cover, this team that I talk about, this team that I love, that now know I exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, like you have more confidence and then you're also thinking, I don't want to mess this up. Like I have eyes on me. You better not say the wrong thing. Right.
Sure.
So that I've been very like cognizant of that when I started, but also like since then, because now it's like, okay, I gotta keep the team happy too.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to ruffle up any feathers. And especially like since doing the schedule release, even more so, right? So
sure,
yeah, just trying to be respectful. And it is for comedy, right? Like there's comedic relief in me doing these videos, but at the same time, like there's no reason for me to cross any lines or do anything like that. So I keep it light,
Yeah.
I keep it light with them. And yeah, I mean, it absolutely has given me, more confidence that it reached the, I guess, intended audience and maybe even like the unintended audience of
Sure.
like it going all the way to Nick Bosa and the 49ers. But I mean, that's a dream, right? Like that's like I said, I didn't plan to do it, but like as I began doing it and it gained more traction, it's like it is kind of what you do it for. If you know that like Nick Bosa has seen it, it's like it's cool, and he's gotten asked about it, right? Like
Yeah.
To which he doesn't seem too thrilled.
So that's what I wanted to ask you next, right? Because you did bring up a really good point. If I may just focus on that for a hot second.
Yeah.
You brought up something that's really, really important because I get this asked a lot, in which you mentioned like, okay, now that you have a relationship with the team, and I don't even care like how deep you want to go in with that, right? But people know you exist. Obviously, we'll talk about the schedule release, but now you've done that with them. There is kind of like that pressure of like, oh man, like the 49ers kind of vouched for me, right? Like they kind of did, like they gave me a much larger platform, their platform, and for me to kind of utilize that. And it's this fine line between, it's like, okay, I still want to be able to criticize the team, like as a fan, right? Like when things are going wrong, and like I'm all about that. But I think it makes you more of a professional because you hone in on what matters, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and go, well, look at this guy's body language. This guy obviously doesn't want to play, this piece of garbage. Like it makes you go, okay, now that I've met some of these people, now there's like that human element that's there. And now I'm going to be able to at least kind of tiptoe that line of, yeah, we can criticize, the on-field performance, but there's no need to go above and beyond and like call this person a terrible person, what have you.
Yeah, I think that tiptoe is the right terminology there for it. And I think that is the cool thing about getting the opportunity to go to the combine, Senior Bowl, things like that, because like it does remind you of the human element. You're literally there and you're talking to these players that are humans. And it's like, you shouldn't have to be reminded by that, but every so often it's like, yeah, it's nice to be reminded of that. And these guys are just guys living out their dreams, playing a sport they love. They're just people, and they've been grinding their whole life to play this sport and what have you. So yeah, no, I think being able to do that has, reminded me of that human element, and even the guys in the front office, right? So like, even like calling for people's jobs is like, I don't even normally want to go there. So yeah, it has changed the way that I, want to be viewed. But like, because you got to think of it like that. Like, if someone from the team was watching me, what would they think of what I was saying right now? Like, so you got to be careful. But at the same time, like you said, you still want to be able to critique, but not, and you should be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
As a fan, you should absolutely be able to. But I think, like there's always a line there, and we're gonna toe it.
Yeah, it's like once it moves beyond football, that's where it gets a little bit dicey, right? Like once it moves to like off the field stuff, that's where it gets a little bit dicey. Because like you said, there's the human element. I mean, listen, I've told you talk about the combine. I met Joe Barry this past February, and I have called for that man's job for years because I was like, he's just not a good defender. Seems like a super nice guy. And he made eye contact with me in a bar when I was at the combine. And I like shook his hand because he came over, and I was like, oh, hey, coach, like, how you doing? And he had just been fired by the Packers. Oh. And exactly. So I'm shaking his hand. And I was like, hey, like, I'm Tom Grossi. And he's like, I know who you are. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, this is going to be so bad. He's like, you are incredible. I was like, oh, okay, good. I was like, we must have saw other videos then because, man, and, we just, like, we had and he was the nicest guy. Right. And it's just like, oh, I mean, he's like, I wish I could stay in Green Bay my whole career. I loved it there. The relationship I made with people, it just didn't work out. And I think it was funny because I'm sitting there and I go, yeah, I know why Matt LaFleur hired him. I talked to him for 20 minutes and I was like, oh, yeah, like I get it. It makes sense. Like, because he's just a very personable guy and he's a very kind guy. And you mentioned, so John Lynch going forward to this year, right, mentions you again. Right, during a press conference, which is phenomenal. Nick Bosa is asked about you. And that line that he says, because, like, I'm viewing it from your perspective when he's adding, you're like, okay, like, what's he going to say? And he's seen you. You know he's seen the video. And he's just like, yeah, he's kind of like, got me dead to rights, really does a nice job. It's kind of annoying, but like, is that a little bit of like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Everything's fine. Gotta put on a brave face here. It's fine.
a little. Like, I think I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, and I've had to talk myself into what I'm about to say.
No, 100%.
I think a lot of people wouldn't like to be impersonated, right? And
that's fair.
And also, like, I think I don't want him to think that I'm making fun of him.
It's a mock.
Because I'm not, and it was never intended to be that. I think some people find it funny, right? Because it's so close to how he talks, and like he speaks in like a somewhat monotone fashion. And that's funny to some people.
Sure.
But it was never meant to be something like disrespectful or something to make fun of him or anything like that. I throw jokes in there about other teams and what he might say about them and, little things about that, but never like, disrespectful to him. So yeah, I think I look at it from that standpoint that, okay, not everyone likes to be impersonated. I joke now that it's like, because he did get asked about it a second time, to which he kind of, he seemed a little more annoyed that he was being asked about it again. And so I was like, man, I hope I never meet him because he's going to tackle me.
And it's not even you at this point. You're just like, I just want people to stop asking me about it. It's not even anything that, because you're not just going, hey, Nick, have you seen the last video I did of you? You see that one? Did you like it? What'd you think about it 30 seconds in? Like, that's not happening.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just, at this point, I don't think he's going to get asked about it again, because I think it's been established. He's watched the videos. It's been established what he feels about him. But I'm just like, I joke about it too, because I'm just like, man, he probably hates me by now.
But it's like it's again, I think that's like a really healthy way, not the hate part. Like, it's a really healthy way to look at it, because the closer you get to this sport that we both love, it's that like you recognize that people are people, right? You go to the combine and you're talking to like 19, 20-year-old kids. And like, I taught high school. So I was like, these guys are not much older than like the students that I taught. So when I was at the combine, the first thing I said to everyone, I was like, hey, like you should be really proud of yourself. Like, congratulations. Like,
Yeah.
you're about to potentially get drafted. Like, you've dreamed about it. And that's every conversation, because like there needs to be that acknowledgement and going, yeah, they're also 20 years old. And I think that as you get closer and closer to, you know, your GM or players or coaches, etc., it just gets reinforced over and over again that, like, yeah, people are people. They have insane athletic ability, but they're, at the end of the day, they're people. And I think that that's like the level-headedness that you have, like, going into it, and it's only going to serve you well.
Yeah, so we'll see if I ever meet Nick in any point in time, but yeah, I'd be a little nervous at this point.
Yeah,
if I
and you're just
did.
like, hey, or you just go full power move. You just impersonate him and just talk right in his face, right? Like that's the full power move.
How would that go? No, I'd be on the ground, like he would sack me, man. Like, I don't want to get tackled by him.
I totally understand. You, I want to talk about the schedule release, because that seems like that is a huge promotion / step up, right, from what we've been talking about. You have this acknowledgement from the team, and it's individuals, right? It's a GM or a player. How does that come about? I watched your behind the scenes video of it too, which is amazing. And shout out to the 49ers, because during 30 and 30, there was only 2 employees in that entire stadium that walked me around there, because they were closed that day. And it was a beautiful stadium. The museum is one of the best in the NFL, and it's so sad that they don't keep it open more often. So how did that kind of come about? Like, what did that phone call or email look like? And what was your reaction when you get offered that opportunity? Because I have to imagine, like, it is pure bliss.
It was absolutely surreal. It was an email that I got. It was a couple weeks before the draft, right? So in April. And yeah, so like a few months really before the schedule even comes out, right? A few months?
Yeah, the schedule is usually in May. Yeah, it's like right around May-ish.
So like a month. Okay. So yeah, they emailed me in April, and I'm like, okay, like they want me for a video. I can't imagine what that could be for. Like,
yeah,
in my mind, I wasn't even thinking like the Nick Bosa thing. Like, again, I'm like, this can't be for the Nick Bosa impersonation, right? I'm like, maybe they're involving a lot of content creators, right? Like, you know, that maybe somehow will have some role in it. That cool. And then as we get closer and they start to tell me a little bit more about it, I'm like, holy cow, like they want me to do this like they want me to do the Nick Bosa impersonation for the schedule release video. Like, this is crazy. Never in a million years did I ever think that I would be collaborating with the 49ers on literally anything, you know? And I think from start to finish, just like the coolest experience I have ever had. Like, first of all, like, I live in Denver now, right? So like they had to fly me out.
Yep.
So they flew me out for this. I come in and I do get a stadium tour of everything, which they didn't have to do, right? Nope. Like, to just, you know, just a little cherry on top of the already awesome day that I'm about to have. And it's just cool to be able to see like the behind the scenes of, again, just like the team that you love, and being able to see the locker room and all things like that. I took pictures in front of Nick Bosa's locker, and I should have left him a little note. But no, like, it's just awesome. It was so surreal. There were many points in the day where, you know, I feel like I had to pinch myself, because I'm just like, I cannot believe this is my life right now. So it was just a really cool experience. I just have so much respect for, you know, the organization, the team, everyone that was a part of that. And I already said, like, never in a million years did I think I'd be a part of it. Getting to see like my account tagged with the 49ers was insane. Like, what? I was a collaborator on that, or like I was tagged on it. I was just like, that's my name. Like, that. It's just, even now I'm like, dude, I can't even believe it. It's just a really cool feeling. And it's surreal because, and we talked about it before going live here, right? Like to be embraced by a team you have embraced almost like your whole life,
Yeah.
is crazy. So again, it's like it's hard to not fanboy fangirl over the experience, but at the same time, it's like you should, because this is
Yeah.
you may never get to do something this cool ever again. So it's like, yeah, it was something I definitely cherished. That whole experience, unreal.
And I mean, well, it's funny you bring that up because like that was going to be my question to you. Like during that day, you talk about like having the pinch yourself moments. Were you able to, because as you and I have talked about just during this conversation, once you start getting closer to the team, there is a level of professionalism that needs to be had, right? Like you can't go in there and be like, "What's going on, everybody?" And just like, we can't do that. So once you get to that point where like you are on the field, you are getting the stadium tour, you are in the locker room, like even just to be in the locker room, like that's a wild experience, right?
Yeah.
And you personally are invited. Were you able to kind of like take that step back and kind of like be present in that moment? Because I think like, especially, content creators that get to those opportunities and stuff, and I'm also speaking for myself, I find it sometimes really difficult to do so because like you're kind of keeping this, hey, like keep your head down, like make sure just like do what they want, make sure, to fulfill the opportunity because you want to make sure that they're happy at the end of the day. But It's also like, damn, like as a fan, like this is truly incredible.
I think again, like just finding that balance of it, right? Because we filmed on a weekend. It was actually the day after day 3 of the draft, so like no one was there, aside from the media team that helped organize this and run it all that day. So in a way, like I did get the opportunity to just kind of soak it all in, right, and feel comfortable doing that around them because they made it. So like they, when I step out on the field at Levi's in the middle of our tour, they have my name up on the jumbotron.
I saw that.
So it's like they made it inviting and they made it feel like a safe space to fangirl. So I appreciate that too, because I think it would have been hard to kind of hold that in. And awesome. I still was professional and respectful of all the areas that they took me through and throughout. But yeah, I think I did definitely get the opportunity to do all the cool things, and they absolutely helped me do that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Steph, like it's just a testament to the work that you do, right? Like you're the one who put in the work to do this, like following your passions while working a 9 to 5 and getting this opportunity that you ask yourself 4 or 5 years ago, right? This would have been, I'm sorry, what? Like I'm in their schedule release, like they're tagging me on here. I'm getting a stadium tour. I'm getting all these things. I'm talking to their like, you know what I mean? Like that is such that you should take a ton of pride in that. And I think that as long as you kind of keep that level-headedness of, hey, like that fan is still me, and like to be able to experience it. And I know how many people are working and fighting and trying to get these opportunities that I am so like grateful to have right now. I mean, yeah, it's an overwhelming feeling, and I get it. To have like your name on a jumbotron. The Packers did not do that. Like the Ravens did that for me. Like during 30 and 30 to go in. And again, for them, it takes 30 seconds. For me, I was like, this is the nicest thing that anyone has ever done for me. Like I never thought like on an NFL stadium, let alone for you, like on your NFL stadium, like the thing that you take pride and joy in, like your team, like you said, that you have embraced your entire life. And now just to get some of that embracing back, like coming your way, is gotta be the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is and was, and that's why I'm just so thankful to them for embracing content creation. I think we were talking about it not too long ago, that it's like I feel like the NFL in general is becoming more open to the idea of content creators. I believe this past year at the Combine, like the NFL allowed a number of content creators to actually go on the field. Yeah, you included.
That's literally how I got there.
And film on the field, right?
Yep.
So like, that's awesome. Like, when would they have allowed that before, right? So it's becoming like a huge community that is growingly becoming accepted. And I think a lot of it has to do with the work that the people before us that were in content creation, the pioneers, you might say, have put forth. And I, Tom, like, I would say you're one of those people, right? Like, because you've done it the right way. And
Appreciate
I
that.
think it's a great example of, if you want to do content creation, not that there's a wrong way, but there's a way that might not get you embraced,
Yeah.
from the league, from the team you're covering, right? So yeah, it's just been cool to see the teams leaning into that, and I think it's paid some dividends, right? Because I think it does help with fan engagement, because fans do embrace these content creators, and there's a reason for
Yeah.
that, because they're fans.
We're
Like,
fans.
we're fans talking to fans, and
Yeah, that's
there's something
literally it.
real about that.
And it's right. It doesn't dilute that. Like, I don't like anytime like, but oh, the Packers should do this for you. No. Like, I don't feel entitled to anything, right?
Yeah.
Because like that's not where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place where this is about to be 10 years of me doing this. It's to the point, if that fandom is still there. Like, I'm watching Packers games and going nuts because I ain't acting, bro. Like, I'm cheering for my team, right? Like, and I love the Packers and I love football. And I think like to come from that place and people identify that. And also you mentioned even just Twitter back in the day, like that sense of community of, hey, I'm a 49ers fan too. I agree with you. And like just having that dialogue, and you're gonna gain that following of just like-minded people who share that same passion for you, whether it's for football or whether it's for your team.
And I've gotten that too, Tom, where it's like, oh, like the Niners should give you a credential pass, and I'm like,
No.
yeah, I don't know if I even want one. Like,
Yeah.
like
that comes with a whole nother thing.
yeah, exactly. That comes with a level of responsibility I don't know that I want, because again, like, going back to the journalism thing, which
Yeah.
I respect, like, journalists, right? But like,
Sure.
I don't think that's what we do, and I don't think that's what I want to do, because like
That's
there's a
yep.
certain level of what they do that I would never want to do. Like, they are in the press box and they can't cheer for their team. I
Nope.
want to cheer. I want to be a fan,
Yep.
like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a space for us, for what we do, and people are gonna embrace that, like we said. So yeah, I think, just like I said, finding that balance of being respectful, but also being able to be a fan and be free in that is awesome.
Because that's also right, like what you do. Like, this is what this content creation about. You're not doing 50-minute podcasts because you're just like, man, can't wait to make all this money doing this podcast, right? Like, it's literally of, I want to talk about my team. Like, I want to like express my passion, thoughts, love for my team, and sometimes disappointment and depression about my team. But it's that element of, yeah, like, I don't want to be in a press box. I don't want to be in a suite, bro. Like, are you kidding me? Lambeau Field? Absolutely not. Like, I want to be out there. I want to be out there, like, because I'm a fan. And that's
exactly
is that like-mindedness. And speaking of the 49ers in general, because not only did you get your opportunity with the schedule release, but then they also acknowledged Rita a few days later, and also had like that release as well, who's been drawing about Jimmy G until he got traded forever. And do you think like that's just the 49ers organization as a whole? Because you mentioned the NFL and especially like YouTube and stuff, like they're starting to embrace content creators more and more now, which is great. But, and something you learn very quickly, the NFL is 32 different businesses, right?
Yeah.
Like, they all do things radically different. Right. If I was, God forbid, a Cowboys fan, right, I would have a level of access because of the way that the Cowboys like treat content creators and their fans, etc. Right. And they're very, very open with that stuff. But then you go to another team that might be more closed off, right, and you don't get any opportunities. So what do you think it is about the 49ers? Like, is it that social media team? Like, is it just like the front office? Is it people just within the organization that are kind of pushing for that? Because they seem to embrace creators and fans on a level that some other teams are not.
I think it's a little of both, right? And I think it helps that the 49ers are in, Silicon Valley, out there in Santa Clara, that they're exposed to social media maybe a little bit more than maybe some other teams are. And that's just kind of the culture in the Bay Area, right? Like everyone's a little more in tune with social media, maybe more so than some other organizations that might be a little more old school,
Sure.
right? And might hire a little more old school. So that could be part of it. And yeah, like I think they've embraced like music artists as well. Um, just some celebrities who are fans of the team. And so I think that's kind of opened the door for content creators because in a way, content creators have become celebrities as of late. And not just like specific to like 49er content creators. I just mean like in general. There's like that family on TikTok, the Aguilars,
Oh yeah,
who
yeah,
they've gotten huge, right?
yeah.
And not all of their content is 49ers related. 49ers caught wind of the fact that they're 49er fans. They post about it every once in a while. They got invited to games. So it's like that's kind of like opening the door again for other content creators to kind of get that opportunity as well. So it kind of starts, like that, like just a team, I guess, sort of wanting to embrace or just seeing people doing content creation that are 49er fans or fans of whatever team and wanting to get that in the building somehow because
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think it's smart by the team because that's fan engagement.
Free marketing
right?
too. I mean, like it literally
Yeah.
because when you embrace fans, right, especially with fans who are known for being fans or content creation, what have
Right.
you, like I'm just, and this is, I know it can come off as very biased, but like that makes me feel closer to my team. Like the fact that the Packers have a fan hall of fame, that makes me feel closer to my team because I'm like, damn, they're acknowledging the fandom, which not every team does. And you're like, oh, cool, my team cares about my role within the organization. That sounds like so, oh, it's my role within the organization. But you know what I mean? Like embracing fandom and saying, hey, like this is a part of what we do. Yeah, the athletes and the coaches, they're obviously going to take center stage for what they're able to do in their athletic ability. But the fandom plays a role within this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you saying that, like your role in the team, like that's not weird to say at all. Every fan has a role in the success of the team because we are the ones who consume and
Sure.
invest in that product, right? So yeah, I mean we have a huge say. So like that's what I say. I think it is smart for teams to embrace that, and hopefully we see that going forward. I think is a step in the right direction for the NFL to like embrace that because then it's like okay, like this is acceptable. Like that's a good idea. We should do more of that in our building, right? So yeah, I think it's cool, and I hope we get to see that more because I think content creation has gotten to a point where it's gotten so big that it's kind of like you can't ignore us, right?
Sure.
Like so yeah, hopefully other teams who maybe have been a little slower to it, eventually get to it, and content creators of other teams can open that up. And I remember too, like 49ers, Packers,
Yep.
Cowboy, like those are examples of large markets.
Sure.
So large fan bases.
Right, bad base, yeah.
And so that's why our like content creators that are content creating about those teams get so popular because like there's so many fans and there's such large engagement from those fan bases. So I think it's been maybe a little bit easier for us, but because I've seen there was a time where I was trying to like get guests from other fan bases on my show.
Sure.
And sometimes I'd have a hard time finding some.
Yes.
I'm sure you've experienced the same because I can easily find some 49ers stuff. I could probably easily find some Packers content creators and from the big markets. Like there's other teams where I'm like, where are you guys?
I got to talk to a Panthers fan. Like where I think, but it's to that point too, right? Embracing that fandom is also, in my opinion, it's investing in like the new like generation of fans because we talk about how there's 32 different businesses, right? At the same time, if you are a fan who is getting into football, I don't care what age you are, you have a choice. And you have a choice between 32 other teams. And you are going to spend your money on one of those teams, right? Or multiple if you're a fan of multiple teams. And I think like for teams to embrace their fans the way that teams like the 49ers have done so, if there is a time in the future where maybe the 49ers aren't that great, right? Or like maybe they're just kind of struggling or having a tough season, you're going to have fans that are still going to stick with them, and you're going to have that regardless. But especially for like this newer generation of fans, and there's like, oh, well, you know what? Steph Sanchez, my 49ers, like they love her and I love Steph. So because of that, right, I'm going to still rock with them even if they're not playing at their best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, I mean that's the cool thing about, again, us being fans, because like we can relate to other fans because we are fans. So like, yeah, that's well, even in the struggles, like we will have something to talk about and we'll be going through that together. So it's just part of the unity factor that I think, we all bring. So, and as that's, I think, hitting home to what you're saying, that when people see content creators that they've watched before, it creates that feeling of, hey, I know that person, and it's unifying, right? And so I think that's cool. Yeah, and even like the whole social media thing with teams has, I think we're seeing it be tailored a little bit more towards younger generations at times. Look at the Chargers social media. Like great example of like maybe the best social media team to ever be assembled. I don't know if that has led to them getting more fans, but it, if I wasn't a Niner fan, and I was a young person online, I would want to be a Chargers fan based on their social media.
Yeah, because it's that's just like the time we live in right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like they are. I real quick because I want to be respectful of your time. Like talking to the Packers, who before this season very old school and traditional when it came to their social media. Now that has changed, and they have been absolutely crushing it. And
awesome.
The reason I had gotten before from the organization was like, hey, the Chargers, and this is not a slight on the Chargers, but like, again, there's options. They are in Los Angeles, right? Which is not primarily like a football city. And so because of that, they are trying to get butts in seats. Like they are trying to bring people in. And if social media can engage with that fandom and that's how they can bring people in, and maybe you'll go see a game because damn, that was a real fire meme, as the kids would say. Like maybe potentially you're gonna go and see a game there because it's crazy. It's like 2% of fans like go to actual games, primarily because they're so freaking expensive. But like at that point, if any leg up that a team can get to kind of bring in that new generation of fandom, yeah, I think that they should utilize that.
Yeah, so that's been really cool to see. And I almost wonder if like the NFL has maybe encouraged teams to maybe start going towards that direction.
Yeah.
And I think too, when one team sees another team having success with like a certain TikTok trend that they do, and it's silly and it's fun, but it gets a ton of engagement, a ton of views, it makes a team go, hey, maybe we should do that or something like that. And it works, right? So and people love that kind of stuff, because too, like, it also gets people feeling closer to the players because we get these little funny moments and we feel like we know the players a little bit better. So like it's all very good for the team, for the NFL, and just like that fan engagement factor.
And fans are so desperate for more about their team, right? Like that's why you and I are able to make content, because people want to learn more about the Packers or their favorite team or the 40. You know what I mean? They want that. And if the team doesn't give it to them, they're still going to be seeking that content out. And that's why you and I are able to do what we do, right? And yeah, that's a
huge point.
It's a beautiful thing. But Steph, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm so appreciative and grateful to be able to catch up with you, to have this conversation. We have raised over $1,100. This amazing organization. Going to help with natural disaster relief all around the country, all around the globe. So a huge shout out to them. This fundraiser will still stay open for a week. But Steph, please tell the people where they can find you. I put a bunch of your links in the description so they can go and check you out.
Yeah, well, all of my socials are Steph49K. So YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Steph49K. And where you can find the Nick Bosa impersonations, the easiest place to find them would be TikTok, because they're right there. That's usually that's the only place that it's kind of the only thing I post on TikTok is the Nick Bosa impersonations for the most part. So it'll be easier to find there. But yeah, and then my podcast, 49 Carats Podcast, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and YouTube as well if you're into seeing my ugly mug every once in a while on a live stream. But Tom, thank you so much once again for having me on. Thank you to donating to such a great organization is setting this up. Thank you to everyone in the chat that has donated so far. Really appreciate everyone. And I mean, I love the fact that we can unite as 49ers and Packers fans as well, because, there's a long history there.
You just let us win one. We almost had it last year, and we almost had that one.
Tom,
it was right there. It was right there.
Tom, I'm going to tell you something. I think you guys are going to get yours this year. It's coming.
We'll see.
I think earlier on Bully Ball, we did a prediction rest of the season for the 49ers. I have the 49ers finishing with a 9-8 record. I'm not as optimistic. But anyway, I have that game as a loss for the Packers game.
But see, Steph, that doesn't make me feel better because we've won before in the regular season. Mason Crosby in your house has kicked the game-winning field goal. That's all great. That's wonderful. Woohoo! We did it, fam. But we got to make it when it counts in January. Just one. I'm just asking.
I'm not making any promises there. So
just make a call if you can, and just be like, hey, if you don't mind, just taking the day off. But Steph,
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you so much for joining. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for donating. Like I said, this fundraiser will be open for another week. But thank you so much for watching. That's Steph Sanchez. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go. Before.
Go Niners.